The mansion was wrapped in silence that night, the kind of silence that only wealth could afford, thick carpets swallowing footsteps, soft lights glowing without warmth, and walls that had heard business calls but never bedtime stories. The millionaire CEO returned earlier than usual, his mind heavy with numbers, contracts, and faces that smiled only when they needed something. He loosened his tie as he walked down the long corridor, thinking only of rest, when a faint sound reached his ears. It was small, almost shy, like it didn't want to be heard. A child's cry. He stopped. At first, he thought it was his imagination. This house was never supposed to sound like that. Children didn't belong to his world of schedules and silence. But the sound came again, soft sobs breaking in uneven breaths. Something about it felt different. It wasn't loud or demanding. It was the sound of someone trying very hard to be quiet because they believed their pain didn't matter. Drawn by something he couldn't name, the CEO followed the sound toward the servants' corridor, a place he rarely entered and barely noticed. One door was slightly open, light spilling onto the floor. Inside, he saw her. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, sat cross-legged on the cold tiles. Her dress was worn but clean, her small shoulders shaking as tears slipped down her cheeks. In her hands, she held a toy, once colorful, now broken. One wool hung loosely, and a crack ran through its body like a wound. She stared at it as if willing it to return to how it used to be. "I didn't mean to," she whispered between sobs. "Please don't break." Her words pierced him more sharply than any business loss ever had. In the corner of the room stood her mother, the maid who cleaned his office every morning before he arrived. Her eyes were red, her hands twisting together helplessly. She wanted to comfort her daughter, but comfort required answers, and answers often required money she didn't have. She had already tried everything, glue, tape, prayers, but none of it worked. The girl hugged the broken toy to her chest, tears soaking into it. "Papa gave me this," she murmured, her voice cracking. "Before he went away forever." The CEO felt something tighten in his chest, something old and forgotten. The word "Papa" echoed inside him, opening a door he had kept locked for decades. He remembered another small room, another broken object, another night when he had cried quietly so no one would hear. Back then, no one had stopped. No one had cared enough to look. He stood there, unseen, as the child's quiet crying filled the room. In that moment, the mansion no longer felt grand. It felt empty. And for the first time in years, the CEO realized that behind all the polished floors and expensive walls, a child's broken toy carried more truth than everything he owned. The door creaked softly as the CEO stepped into the room, and the air instantly changed. The maid gasped and straightened, fear rushing into her face like she had been caught committing a terrible crime. Her heart pounded as she hurried forward, ready to apologize for something she didn't even understand yet. In this house, mistakes were dangerous, even small ones. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered quickly, lowering her head. "I didn't know she was making noise. I'll take her away." The little girl froze. She clutched the broken toy tighter, her small fingers curling around it as if it were the only thing protecting her. Slowly, she looked up at the man standing before her. He was tall, dressed in an expensive suit, his face calm but unreadable. She had seen him before, from far away, from behind doors, but never this close. Her crying stopped, replaced by fear so deep it made her chest hurt. The CEO raised his hand gently, stopping the maid mid-sentence. "It's all right," he said quietly. Those words alone stunned her. He walked closer and knelt down, his polished shoes touching the dusty floor without hesitation. The maid's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever seen him do this, not for anyone. Not for anything. The little girl tried to hide the toy behind her back, ashamed. Tears still clung to her lashes. "What happened?" he asked softly, his voice slower now, careful not to frighten her. She shook her head, unable to speak. Her lips trembled, and her eyes filled again. After a moment, she slowly brought the toy forward and held it out to him, as if offering proof of her sadness. "It broke," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. It was Papa's." The word landed heavily between them. "Your father?" the CEO asked. She nodded. "He gave it to me before he got sick. Mommy says he's in heaven now. This is the only thing he touched that I still have." Her voice cracked at the end, and she looked down, embarrassed by her tears. The CEO took the toy carefully, as though it were something fragile and alive. He turned it in his hands, studying the broken wheel, the cracked edge. But he wasn't really looking at the toy anymore. He was looking at memories, his own childhood, the nights he had cried into a pillow he pretended was his father's shoulder. The hunger. The loneliness. The feeling that the world didn't notice quiet pain. "I know how that feels," he said, almost to himself. The maid looked up in surprise. He met the little girl's eyes again. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the things that break are the things we love the most. Not because they're weak, but because we hold them too close." She didn't fully understand his words, but she felt the warmth in them. Slowly, her shoulders relaxed. "I can't bring your papa back," he continued, his voice steady but heavy. "But I promise you this, I won't let what he gave you disappear." The household staff watching from the hallway stood frozen. This was not the man they knew. This was someone softer. Someone human. And in that small room, beside a frightened child and a broken toy, the CEO made a silent decision, one that would change far more than anyone could imagine. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the mansion, touching everything it had ignored the night before. The house woke up differently that day. Servants whispered as they worked, glancing toward the main hall where something unusual was happening. The CEO was already awake, standing near the dining table, not with his phone or papers, but with a small box placed carefully in front of him. When the maid was called in, her hands trembled. She expected questions. Maybe warnings. Instead, she saw her daughter standing beside the CEO, eyes wide with disbelief, holding something close to her chest. It was the toy. Not replaced. Not new. The same one, but whole again. The broken wheel fixed, the crack carefully sealed, the colors restored just enough to look loved, not forgotten. The little girl stared at it as if it might vanish if she blinked too long. "You fixed it," she whispered. The CEO knelt and smiled faintly. "I asked someone very skilled to help me," he said. "Some things don't need to be replaced. They need to be respected." The maid's knees weakened. Tears filled her eyes as she bowed again and again, unable to find words strong enough. But the CEO wasn't finished. He stood and addressed her calmly. "Your daughter will start school next month," he said. "I've arranged everything. Books, uniform, transport." He paused, then added gently, "And you'll be moving into a small house nearby. No more worrying about rent." The room went silent. The maid covered her mouth, crying openly now. She tried to speak, but gratitude drowned her voice. The CEO looked at the little girl once more. "Your father would be proud of you," he said. "You didn't throw away what was broken. You held on to it." The girl hugged the toy tightly and nodded, her smile trembling but real. Later that day, as the household returned to work, something had changed. The walls felt warmer. The silence felt kinder. People spoke softer, smiled more. When asked why he had done all this, the CEO simply said, "A long time ago, I cried over something broken. No one listened. I won't let that happen again." And from that morning on, the mansion was no longer just a place of wealth, it became a place where quiet tears were finally seen.